1. You know how everyone has that one party story? The one that no matter how hard you try, will never be topped. Well, I'm a second-year college student who attends a university that likes to go by the mantra of work hard, play hard. And this is that story. A couple of weeks ago, I was invited to a pretty big annual event at my school that had a reputation of having a pretty wild after-party. My buddy, let's call him Dewey, had just finished his semester and I hadn't, so he was pretty bored back in our hometown. I figured that since he had nothing to do back home, I would bring him to the after-party and he could crash back at my dorm for the night. Have a good time and all that. And we did. We had a fucking fantastic time. Even made it back to my dorm in one piece somehow. I thought we just went back and crashed, but apparently some serious shit went down after the party that I didn't hear about until later. And by then, there was nothing I could do except laugh and think, there's no way that happened. So fast forward to the morning after. It's windy as hell outside and Dewey and I are sitting at a dining hall having some delicious hangover food. Suddenly this conversation comes up.
Dude, I did something last night.
What did you do?
Something bad.
Dewey, what the hell did you do? Then he hits me with what actually happened that night after we left the party. Apparently I was too blacked out to remember. But he definitely wasn't. And once he started recalling the story, I began to remember the shit show that transpired afterwards. To this day, whenever I tell this story, people don't believe me, until I show them. But I'll get to that later. So we leave the party, stumble our way back to the dorm, and get into the elevator, since I live on the 7th floor. We get out of the elevator without incident, and kind of just plop down in my floor's lounge, which was thankfully empty. Seems alright, but then Dewey throws up fucking everywhere. On the couch, on the study tables, on the floor, on the goddamn walls. No surface was safe from his wrath. At this point, I'm already disgusted and thinking, oh fuck. He's my guest, so I am responsible for this. Oh fuck. Housing probation, here I come. But then it got worse. It got so much worse. After the pukepocalypse, he then says he has to go. So I hand him my ID card so he can swipe into the bathroom, which I should mention is a mere 20 feet away from us, but he turns me down and says,
"Nah, man, I gotta go now, like, right now. And it's gonna be a big one."
Dewey then opens my lounge window, sticks his butt cheeks out, and then proceeds to release the Kraken all over the side of my precious dormitory building. And when I say release the Kraken, I mean it. The immediate assault to my senses told me that it was easily the most disgusting toilet slammer I've ever been witness to in my entire life, including my own. Imagine every terrible shit you've ever taken, multiplied by the fiery passion of 1,000 burning suns. It was like watching the slime fall and splatter everywhere on the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards. The sound it made was too awful, like something just died and these were its final gurgles. Just the fucking smell alone probably could have killed most small animals. He finishes unleashing his unholy intestinal sewage all over the side of my building, while I sit there just agape but too drunk to do anything about it. Then we nonchalantly stroll back to my room and promptly pass out. Back to the present, I'm horrified, disgusted. Never in my life would I have imagined I would be privy to anything like this. But what's done is done. Fuck it. No harm done, right? Wrong. I make my way back to my building and ride the elevator up so that I can relax and nurse my hangover. In the elevator I hear this conversation between two girls. I can't believe someone did that to our lounge. Yeah, it's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. It smelled pretty bad in there too. The cleaning lady said it's either really bad throw-up or something way worse. Did they know who did it? I don't know, but they must have been living higher up to hit floor 4. At least it didn't get inside or anything. Now I'm curious and I think I know what happened. So I get off on the 4th floor, enter their lounge, and lo behold, I see dewy shit smeared all over the window of the lounge 3 floors below me. Apparently some people were peacefully studying at 3 in the morning, the night that this shit went down, when all of a sudden, wham! Dewey's butt babies slammed into their window hard enough to make the glass shake. The wind must have hurled it sideways mid-descent, causing his work of art to splatter onto their window with a resounding thud. I take one good look, and smell, snap the picture and flee to my room practically dying from laughter. Then I tell pretty much all of our friends back at home because, come on, how do you not tell everyone about that? I didn't tell any of my college friends though. I don't need that kind of blood, poop, on my hands, and for good reason. Admin heard about it and basically put out a warrant for the capture of whoever did the deed, or for anyone who helped them do it. I basically had to be on my toes for the rest of the semester in fear of being charged as an assistant to this assailant of justice. People from other dorms eventually heard about it and began sullying the good name of my building, calling it Shit Central and other hilarious names. They didn't just forget about him either. For the rest of the year, the Phantom Shitter became something of a legend. No one knew who it was, but they know what he did and what he's capable of. His legacy lives on, in me, in you, but mostly in the shit smears he left trailing down the side of my dormitory. Those are a little bit harder to wash off. 2. 18-year-old skinny kid living with my parents. Today, 4 a.m., I was sharpening the kitchen knives, and I was testing them on various objects I could find in the kitchen, being the retarded, useless shit that I am. Curiously enough, I thought that if I poked a hole in the water bottle over the water dispenser, it wouldn't need to gurgle and bubble when being used. I felt brilliant. Why haven't they done this themselves? I'll fix it. First I tried the sharpened knives. I tried poking, then vigorously stabbing the plastic bottle above the waterline. Not only was I weak and scrawny with my jabs, but my sharpening was apparently shit quality too. I later realized that I was sharpening serrated knives using a grinding stone. I ruined the teeth, making them even duller. The thick plastic water bottle was unexpectedly tough, more than able to stand up to my feeble attempt at gouging it. And it never really came to mind that this was for a reason. I was about to quickly find out. I got a shitty idea. I heated up a knife using the stove until it was red hot, and then gently pressed it into the bottle. The blade glided in like a hot knife through butter, or plastic, leaving a 1-inch long hole. About 3 seconds later, the laws of physics took over. Water started gushing out from the top of the water dispenser, spraying all over the carpeted floor, the microwave, and nearby wooden table. I jumped, panicked. I threw the red-hot burning knife on said wooden table, lifted the water bottle from the dispenser as it was continuously spilling water everywhere, struggled towards the kitchen sink, and tossed it in. I set it upright. At this point I lost about half the water. It was still leaking from the hole. I had a stick of hot glue laying around. I heated the glue over the stove and painted the bottle like a fucking maniac having a stroke. Needless to say, my efforts were unsuccessful. I taped up the hole on top and flipped the bottle upside down. It was no longer leaking, but the hole was still there. I turned around to see my kitchen was on fire. Holy fuck. I took some water from the tap and doused it on the table. The knife sizzled and popped. The fire was out. Water was still leaking from the water dispenser, no idea where. I got some rags to start wiping the water, but as soon as I touched the dispenser, I got electrocuted, fell to the floor. The arms were spasming out and I felt like the biggest failure ever. I got back up, and carefully sneaked around the evil, murderous dispenser and flicked it off. I ran back, started wiping the place. The carpeted floor was not handling the water well at all. While all hell was breaking loose in the kitchen, my mother was in the living room, about 15 feet away, watching henna tutorials with headphones on. The stress levels were high. If she found out all the crap I did, I actually don't know what would have happened. There's a giant black crater in the table. The dispenser and ground are covered in water. I use some more hot glue on the hole, still scrubbing the stick over it. I tape a plastic sheet over the glue and hope it's airtight. Put it back on the dispenser. I hear a small hissing sound coming from the patched hole. Shit, 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 shit. I run and grab the tape and start slapping on more tape all over the place, hoping the hissing will stop. 15 seconds later and the water starts gushing out again. Shit, shit, shit. I lift the water bottle again and toss it back into the sink. Again, water all over the fucking place. I'm dripping soaked. My mother hears banging and clanging sounds. What are you doing in the kitchen? What's that sound? I yell back, nothing. I just dropped something. I've lost 3/4 of all the water to the ground. I tape the top and flip it over again for the second time. I tear the tape, the plastic sheet, and the glue off, and I carefully dry the exterior, apply some more hot glue, slowly, and let it cool off this time. It looks like a good seal. I place it back, and it looks good. It started to gurgle and bubble again. I turn on the water dispenser, electrocute it again. I turn it back off. Bad idea. There's a 2-inch black charred crater in the wooden table. Any way I can fix it? I've covered it with a table mat for now. Also, the kitchen smells a lot because of the water. I used a lot of rags and tissues to clean the water, but there's still a lot left. Any remedy to that? My mom asked why the carpet is wet and why it smells. I told her the gutter must have leaked. I don't know how long she is going to believe that. Is the water dispenser going to work after it is dried? Update. It's the next day. My dad is real suspicious. He noticed the water missing and he thinks there might be a leak. The smell is still there. He thinks it's coming from the gutter. The charred part of the table is still under the table mat. I also bought some wood polish spray. I'm thinking of filling the crater in the wooden table with hot glue and spraying it with the polish to make it seem like wood. Will this work, or should I not even try it? Update 2. I filled the crater with the glue and painted over it. It's noticeable, but not from a distance. I'll still cover it with the mat though. I used a wet vacuum cleaner in the kitchen. The carpet is doing better. It's dried over the 2 nights, but the smell still lingers. I've been using heavy amounts of air freshener. 3. I was still in elementary school, let's say 9 years old, at the time of this fuck-up. My grandmother had moved in with my parents and I, hoping to spend the last years of her life at our East Coast suburban home. On this fateful day, my mother, my grandmother, and I were about a block from my house. I noodled about on my bicycle, while the adults ambled alongside one another down the sidewalk. As I passed into the road from behind a parked car, I was hit with a shockwave of adrenaline. A large vehicle appeared to be barreling down the street toward me. Faced with an oncoming collision, my mind and muscles quickly cooperated, and I pushed to pedal my way across the street before the moving car could reach me. The bike that I was riding at the time, however, was relatively new, and it was considerably larger than the bike I had previously gotten comfortable with. In propelling this larger bike forward, I managed to escape one disaster, but the additional inertia carried me into another unforeseen disaster. Upon reaching the other side of the street, I slammed into my grandmother. She toppled over with an exclamation of pain as my mother and the driver of the oncoming car looked on in horror and disbelief. Though my grandmother was not seriously hurt, I was beyond ashamed. To make matters worse, it became clear to me that the driver had stopped prior to the point at which we would have collided. My escape was thus an unnecessary blunder at best. I don't recall going on any neighborhood adventures with my mother and grandmother after this event. 4. Last summer I got inspired by the primitive technology guy to do a project. I settled on a wood-fired pizza oven and spent several weeks working on it in my garage. I got to the point where it was time to construct a base. I decided to try and simplify the design I had been following by using a very sturdy wood base, a layer of sand, and then fire brick on top instead of a much more substantial and time-consuming build-out. I broke in my oven starting with a small fire, and then building up to the full temperature, 1000 Fahrenheit, 540 centigrade. Within a few weeks, I was making some seriously good wood-fired pizza to share with my family and friends. Time goes by and I got inspired again. I wanted to put doors on the oven so that I could make bread after I was done with a round of pizzas. This is where the primitive technology inspiration really kicks in. I made my own clay mix by refining some dirt from my backyard, constructed a door, and then fired it in my pizza oven. What could go wrong? I spent a full day firing my pieces. I started in the morning, and by 2 p.m., I added the last few logs to the fire. At 9 p.m., I went to check on the results. Pottery success. I had created real pottery, and the oven appeared to be fine, though warm to the touch. Unfortunately, my doors cracked, but I still went to bed pretty happy with my results. At 2 a.m., my wife and I awoke to pounding on the front door, and someone yelling, "Your house is on fire!" It was one of my neighbor's teenage kids who had been out for a late-night stroll. Adrenaline kicked in hard. I jumped out of bed, threw on a pair of pants, and ran outside. My wife similarly jumps out of bed, runs down the hall, and grabs the kids to get them outside. As I ran to the backyard, I tried to convince my wife and neighbor that this is no big deal, and I can put this out, but it's too late. The neighbor already has 911 on the phone, and my wife's face is, well, you can imagine. I hooked up my garden hose, and I proceeded to douse the flames. A few minutes of hosing go by, and I hear a truck drive past. I rightly assume it's the fire department, and I hold my breath hoping they will drive past and keep going. They do, but they circle back. My neighbor's kid and my wife go out and flag them down. Shit. I make the walk of shame to the front of my house, wearing nothing but a pair of pants, no shirt, no shoes, in November in a cold climate, and try to explain to them that I have everything under control. That didn't work. They park the truck and come to the backyard to check it out. At this point, I notice that the firemen all have bedhead, so I start apologizing for having woken them up. As we round the corner of my house, and they see the slightly steaming rubble, their faces go from amped firemen, ready to save lives, to a sort of let down, not again kind of emotion. One of them snatched the garden hose out of my hand, and the other smashed what little remained of the oven until it was fully out. In part, I think they took out some anger on my poor oven. But in the end, they simply got my contact info, and we all head back to our homes and beds. The next morning, I woke up to survey the damage. Lessons learned. Don't take shortcuts. Make sure fires are fully extinguished. Wood is not a good oven building material, especially right next to your house and propane grill. Don't tell your wife, "Calm down, I can fix this," when your house is on fire. 5. So I've been known to sleepwalk and talk since I've been young. As I've gotten older, things have gotten less frequent, but in the right circumstances, it can happen. This was one of those times. We were traveling and had just returned home from a 4-hour time change, west to east, which I tend to find more challenging. The next day, I started 3 night shifts in a row. Not exactly helpful for changing time zones. The day after that, I was due to take our dog to the nearest vet college, as the local vets couldn't find out what was going on, and she was referred to a specialist. Needless to say, I had trouble sleeping the night before, likely from a combination of the above, as well as anxiety about the appointment. It's a 4.5-hour drive, and I had to get up at 5:30 a.m. to make it on time. When the clock read 2:30 a.m., and I still wasn't asleep, I knew I was in trouble. Anyway, I make it there, do the appointment, and head back to my good friend's parents' house, where I'm staying the night. I've only met them a couple of times and have never been to their place before. We settle in for dinner and her dad opens a bottle of his homemade red wine. Her dad enjoys making it, but is fairly new to the process. It's not bad, and a couple of glasses go down easy. We're sharing stories and I'm telling him about our recent trip to Whistler, BC, and the wildlife we saw there. I'm pretty tired at this point, so I head to bed around 11:30. I'll have to be back to the vet college for 7 a.m. for phase 2 of the workup, so that was on my mind. At 2 a.m., I finally fell asleep. Worst decision ever. I'm not exactly sure when, but I woke up around 5:30 a.m. and noticed a shape in the corner of this strange room I was in. My asleep brain made the obvious connection that it was most certainly a bear. He didn't seem to notice me, so it was the perfect time to formulate a plan. He was standing in front of the only open door. The next logical thing was to achieve a height advantage, which I deftly did by climbing onto the desk in the room. Once I got to a higher level, I realized there was a window behind me. I quietly pulled the cord and raised the blind. Even more quietly unlatched the window and cranked it open. The bear was still there, chilling in the corner. He was obviously very big. Still asleep, I went to put my hand out the window, but was stopped by the screen. As many of you are probably aware, the screen is the most hazardous part when escaping bears in your bedroom. I knew I didn't have time to start playing with this screen, as the noise might alert the bear to my master plan. I only had one chance, so I had to just go for it. I curled my finger in the tab on the screen and yanked it out as hard as I could and threw it on the floor. I deftly jumped up and slid out the window and onto... mud? Why am I on mud? I stand up and scrape my back on something sharp. I crawl out from under this structure. It was the back deck. I see the garden. Oh shit. I'm standing out in the backyard of my host's house in my underwear. I'll bet the doors are locked. How am I supposed to get back in? I'm starting to come to now, but still knew I couldn't go back in through the window, as the bear is probably really pissed by now. I sneak around to the front deck in my skivvies, try the handle gently, locked. I go back to the backyard and try that handle, again locked. I'm just starting to think of how I'm going to explain this to my hosts when it all comes crashing down. I'm on an island right now with no bears, let alone one in my bedroom. Finally fully awake, I make the shameful crawl back in through the window, first double-checking the corner just to make sure he really wasn't there. I'm sure I got mud on the carpet, but I just went back to bed at this point. The next morning I was able to remember all of this, odd for my sleepwalking. Usually other people, my wife, needs to fill me in on the details, but I always remember pieces. The screen is quite bent, but I was able to get it back on the window okay. There was a scrape on my back from the deck, nothing that required medical attention. I haven't even told them yet. I will, just waiting for the right time. Their daughter's wedding is coming up. Maybe that will be the right time. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Embarrassing Stories, episode 48. Thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, hope you guys all have a nice weekend. I think you should be getting this on Saturday. I'm going to be hoping for good weather. Might get it, I'm not sure. I'll be doing the usual, kind of continuing to work in my garden, and I'll be continuing some work on those old family pictures as well. And I'll make time to play about with these new programs I've installed. Well, updated versions of programs I was using, and some new things I've got as well, to see if we can maybe improve the quality of the videos a bit, because that is an ever-evolving process. And the more I learn, the better I get at doing things. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.